Something is moving beneath the surface, and if you've been picking up on it lately, you're not imagining things. There is a decision forming inside them, a real one, a final one, and somehow, without either of you saying a word about it, your name is written all over it. From the outside, they might look completely composed, distant maybe, going through the motions of their normal life. But underneath that calm exterior, something much heavier is happening. A truth they have been outrunning for a long time has finally caught up with them, and it's too heavy to keep carrying the way they have been. Here is what most people miss entirely. This isn't simply about whether they miss you. It isn't a straightforward question of whether they come back or stay gone. This goes much deeper than that. This is about what your connection woke up inside them, what it exposed, what it forced them to feel when they finally ran out of places to hide. Stay with this, because what's unfolding right now is not small. This is not a passing phase or a temporary emotional detour. This is a turning point in who they are as a person. They are standing at the edge of a truth that could genuinely redirect the course of their life, and regardless of which direction they ultimately move, toward you or away from you, they will not come out of this moment unchanged. That much is certain. The tension you have been feeling is real, and it has a source. The silence has a reason. The distance has a reason. Behind all of it, an inner battle has been building toward its peak, and what comes next will strip away every mask and show you who they actually are when they can no longer hide behind comfortable excuses. What you're sensing right now is not wishful thinking. It is not a story you constructed out of longing. It is the quiet, unmistakable energy of another person wrestling with themselves, because something about your presence reached places inside them that nothing else has been able to reach. Deep in the corners of their mind, where they thought they had everything organized and under control, they are standing at a crossroads, and every road in front of them somehow bends back in your direction. For a long time, they kept themselves moving. They buried themselves in routine, in work, in the comfortable noise of daily life. They tried to explain away the intensity of what they felt. They told themselves that time would soften it, that enough distance would shrink it down to something manageable, that eventually the feeling would just quietly dissolve if they gave it enough space to die. But certain connections don't work that way. The harder they pushed this one down, the more it kept resurfacing. The more they tried to file it away as something temporary, the more their inner world refused to treat it that way. Because what happened between you was never shallow. It didn't just graze the surface of who they are. It reached the deeper layers, the parts that don't reset, the parts that can't simply be wiped clean when life gets inconvenient. And now they are doing something they genuinely did not expect to be doing. They are going back through everything, not just what you meant to them, but what this connection reveals about the person they've been and the person they might be capable of becoming. Because here's what matters most in this moment. When someone starts questioning the story they've been telling themselves, change is already in motion. It doesn't announce itself loudly, it just begins. The decision they're struggling with isn't simply about you. It isn't just about staying or going, reaching out or disappearing for good. The deeper question they're sitting with is whether they're ready to face who they really are. That is the fear that sits beneath all the other fears. Part of them feels a pull toward you that feels almost natural, almost gravitational. Your absence doesn't register as neutral to them. It registers as something incomplete, something that keeps finding its way back into their awareness, no matter how hard they try to redirect their attention elsewhere. But an equally strong part of them resists, because actually being honest about what they feel would require vulnerability. It would demand that they drop the performance and live from something real. And genuine change is frightening in a way that's hard to explain to someone who hasn't had to dismantle everything they built to survive. It breaks old patterns. It challenges identities that were constructed specifically to keep pain at a distance. It asks a person to let go of the version of themselves that once felt like protection. That is why the energy around this feels heavier now. That is why the connection feels more charged, even when nothing is being said. They are no longer just running from the truth. They are beginning to sit with it. they are being forced to ask themselves why you keep returning to their thoughts. Why their mind drifts back to you in quiet moments. Why nothing and no one else has been able to occupy the space your presence created. The mind can only fight itself for so long before something has to give, before it has to pick a side. And when that moment arrives, what's been carefully hidden starts to show through the cracks. If they choose to come back, it won't be because the path became easy. It won't be because everything suddenly aligned in a simple and convenient way. It will be because they finally recognized what was genuinely rare about what existed between you. Because they understood, in a way they couldn't dismiss, that some things don't come around again. And if they choose to walk away, it won't be a reflection of your worth. It won't mean your love wasn't real or wasn't enough. It will simply mean they weren't ready for the kind of honesty and inner transformation that being with you honestly required. That is why your job right now is not to chase, not to push, not to try to engineer an outcome. Let the truth do what only truth can do. Let time reveal what no amount of words could force into the open. What's happening inside them is not a minor emotional fluctuation. It is a full-scale internal conflict. On one side, there is the emotional pull toward you, warm, instinctive, carrying the weight of memory and shared feeling and a sense of belonging that they cannot fully explain away. On the other side, there is an old protective voice, the one built from disappointment and past pain and the hard lessons that came from trusting and being hurt. That voice tells them to stay guarded, to keep their distance, to prioritize safety above everything else. These two forces are pressing against each other right now with a force that is becoming harder and harder to manage. They might be keeping themselves busy on the outside. They might look composed and unbothered. But the more they try to bury this, the more it pushes upward. Because the real battle was never happening in the world around them. It has always been happening inside them. And that's exactly why what happens next carries so much more meaning than it might appear to from the outside. You became something significant in their life. Even if neither of you fully saw it while it was happening, something about this connection pressed against the walls they spent years carefully building. It found the version of them that exists underneath the image, underneath the control, underneath all the practiced ways they learned to keep themselves protected. And now they are being forced to make a brutal choice. They can stay inside the familiar shape of the person they've always been, or they can step toward an unknown version of themselves that requires courage and softness and a willingness to be emotionally exposed. That struggle is exhausting them. You felt it in the inconsistency, the push and pull, the moments when they seem to be moving closer, followed by the moments when they close off entirely. This is not always calculated. Sometimes this is simply what it looks like when someone genuinely wants the connection but is terrified of the transformation that comes attached to it. As the pressure intensifies, something else happens. The illusions start burning away. They can no longer convince themselves that you were just a brief chapter or a passing feeling that time would eventually dissolve. They are being forced to see you more clearly. And more than that, they're being forced to see themselves more clearly. Old memories are returning with sharper edges. Emotions that were packed away are being felt again with an intensity that surprises them. Every silence carries more meaning now. Every absence says more than it used to. And this uncomfortable, unwanted process is actually necessary. Because real decisions don't come from avoidance. They come from moments when the fog starts to thin and the heart can no longer stay buried beneath layers of fear and habit. That thinning is happening now, even if it's still quiet, even if nothing on the surface has shifted yet. There is a point where the weight of uncertainty becomes too much to keep carrying. They are approaching that point. Not because anything in the outside world has changed, but because the mind cannot remain permanently divided against itself. For too long, they managed their feelings by minimizing them, told themselves it wasn't that serious, told themselves they could handle it, contain it, eventually move past it. But feelings with this much depth don't stay still. They grow in silence. They deepen in absence. They wait, patiently and without announcement, until the person can no longer pretend they aren't there. And now those feelings are returning. in the late quiet of the night, in the still spaces between one busy thing and the next. In memories they didn't plan to revisit, but find themselves inside anyway. In the strange, hollow feeling that lingers after a full day, when everything slows down and their mind goes back to you almost without permission. How naturally the thought of you rises, how you remain like a constant low hum underneath the noise of their life. How nothing they've tried to fill the space with has actually worked. Your stepping back played a meaningful role in this. By not filling every silence, by not making yourself endlessly available, you left them alone with their own inner world. And that silence became a mirror. Without your energy there to soften the distance, they had to sit with the full weight of what your absence actually felt like. The missing warmth, the missing sense of ease, the missing feeling of being genuinely known by another person. And here is why this matters so much. When someone is finally forced to feel the real shape of what is gone, they stop questioning whether it mattered. They start questioning whether they waited too long to admit that it did. In their quieter moments, they compare. Not always deliberately, not always in words, but they compare what they felt with you to what they feel in every other space of their life, and the difference keeps asserting itself. This isn't about fantasy or idealized memory. It is about depth, about the specific and rare way your presence affected them, how it made them feel more alive, more visible, more emotionally awake than they'd felt in a long time. That is why this process is changing them from the inside out. They cannot remain half present and half absent any longer. They are beginning to understand that the path forward requires them to be honest. Either they retreat fully into the safety of what they've always known, or they step toward what this connection has been asking of them from the very beginning. The fear and the desire are no longer taking turns. They are colliding directly, at full force. On one side, the pull toward you, warm, instinctive, deeply human. On the other side, the fear of what love actually costs, the fear of being truly seen, the fear of handing someone the power to hurt them. And that fear may have very little to do with you personally. It may come entirely from older wounds, older betrayals, older moments when trust was extended and met with pain. But wherever it came from, it is loud. And yet, for the first time, the desire is starting to be louder. That is not a small thing. It means something inside them is beginning to shift from self-protection toward truth. This is why the push and pull has felt so intense. In one moment, they feel almost ready to stop resisting, to let themselves fully move with what they feel. In the next moment, fear surges back and pulls them into doubt. Both feelings are real to them. The longing feels true, and the fear feels protective, and they are caught between them. Not because they don't care, but because they are trying to survive the storm of their own interior. But no one can live inside that storm indefinitely. A breaking point always comes. Eventually, one side takes over. Either fear continues to hold them at a distance, or their deeper feelings finally lead them into the unknown. And this isn't only about a relationship. It's about identity, about who they decide to be from this point forward. That moment is getting closer. Until now, they've lived in the space of hesitation, turning the same thoughts over and over, studying every small sign, replaying every significant memory, trying to logic their way through something that is fundamentally beyond logic. But feelings that carry this much weight eventually demand an answer. All the confusion, all the reflection, all the quiet longing. It has been building toward one unavoidable thing, a real choice. And as that choice draws nearer, they may actually seem more distant, more restless. Don't misread that. Sometimes distance is not the ending. Sometimes it is the very last stage before a truth becomes impossible to delay any further. They are starting to recognize that living in the middle, neither fully in nor fully out, is costing them something. It is draining their peace. It is keeping them in a loop that is becoming its own kind of suffering. And now they are being pushed toward accountability for what they actually feel. That requires honesty, and honesty removes excuses. They are having to ask themselves whether they are willing to risk the comfort of the life they know for a connection that demands genuine growth from them. There is a sense of finality beginning to settle over all of this. The season of maybe is drawing to a close. Something more honest is taking its place. Somewhere inside them, they know this isn't just another fleeting feeling or a passing emotional moment. This is a milestone, a marker, and the hesitation that once felt like self-protection is beginning to feel like a cage. They are recognizing that indefinitely avoiding this choice never actually kept them safe. It only kept them stuck. And being stuck has its own quiet kind of pain. So the walls they relied on are beginning to crack under the weight of what they can no longer pretend away. They are seeing the gap between how they actually felt and how they chose to act. They remember the moments they stayed silent when they wanted to say something. The times they withdrew when they wanted to stay close. The moments when pride stood in the exact place where honesty should have been. That awareness is uncomfortable, but it is also meaningful, because it closes the distance between feeling something and actually doing something about it. And once that gap starts closing, change stops being just a possibility. It becomes a requirement. The truth is rising in a way that can no longer be redirected. For a long time, they were skilled at managing their own emotions, even hiding them from themselves. Logic became armor. Distance became method. Silence became a convenient excuse. But deeply rooted feelings are not manageable forever. When a person is left alone with their own thoughts long enough, truth rises above all the noise they've used to cover it. That's what's happening now. This isn't coming from external pressure. It's coming from an internal awakening that has been building quietly this whole time. They can no longer take shelter in uncertainty. The connection has become too present in their stillest moments. It keeps appearing when the world quiets down. It keeps returning when they try to direct their attention somewhere else. And that repeated return is doing something important. It is changing how they understand the entire story of what you were to each other. What once seemed like a collection of scattered moments now looks like a pattern. What once felt complicated now feels significant in a way that's hard to argue with. And they are starting to realize something that shifts everything. They were not simply missing a person. They were missing the version of themselves that came alive when they were with you. More open, more honest, more emotionally present than they usually allow themselves to be. And the ache of living so far from that version of themselves has become too persistent to keep ignoring. When someone begins to miss who they became with you, the question is no longer whether the connection mattered. The question becomes whether they are brave enough to go back to the truth it revealed inside them. As this awareness deepens, the outside world loses its ability to distract them the way it once did. They can stay busy, surround themselves with people and plans and noise. But underneath all of it, there is still one quiet current running in the same direction, back toward you, toward what was felt, toward what was never fully resolved. This is the stage where the ego starts losing its grip. The ego wants distance, wants control, wants safety at whatever the cost. But the deeper self is beginning to understand that complete disconnection carries its own kind of pain. And sometimes that pain becomes heavier than the fear of being open. So now they are weighing two futures against each other. The safe and familiar life they know, with all its emotional emptiness, against the uncertain path that carries genuine risk, but also the possibility of something real. And for the first time, the possibility is beginning to feel more valuable than the protection. That is where real courage is born, not when fear disappears, but when truth becomes more important than staying comfortable. And with that shift comes a strange kind of stillness. The frantic cycling of indecision begins to calm. The pressure is still there, but it feels different, more grounded, more focused, more honest. They are no longer fighting every feeling that surfaces. They are starting to let those feelings speak, starting to acknowledge that what they feel is real. And that quiet acceptance brings something that wasn't there before, not because everything is solved, but because the inner war is slowly turning into inner clarity. They are standing at the edge of the life they've always lived, looking toward something new, and the only bridge between where they are and where they could be is one honest choice. This is the moment of genuine transparency. The silence that once protected them is now reflecting them back to themselves. It's showing them where pride got in the way of love, where fear created distance that didn't actually need to exist. They are revisiting things with new eyes, conversations, moments, the weight of pauses that were once glossed over. And they're seeing it all with more maturity now, more emotional depth, more clarity about what was actually happening. They can see where fear was the one making the decisions. They can also see the value of what was being quietly built between you. This is not just about regret. It's about reordering priorities. Things they once placed above genuine connection, image, control, emotional self-protection are beginning to look hollow next to something real. And something else is growing in them: empathy. They are starting to sense what their withdrawal may have felt like from where you were standing, starting to grasp the weight you carried while they stood back inside their own confusion. That understanding softens people in ways that arguments never can. It makes it harder to keep retreating behind coldness, because once a person genuinely takes responsibility for how their choices affected someone else, the story changes. They are no longer just reacting to their own fear. They are beginning to step into the role of someone who actively chooses what comes next. And when a person reaches that stage, everything about their energy becomes more serious. Not dramatic, not loud, serious. Because they understand that whatever they do next will be a true reflection of the kind of person they are choosing to be. The final fragments of hesitation are burning away. The old questions of should I and could I are losing their power. In their place, something with more weight is forming, a recognition that they must face what is real, must stop wasting their own time in emotional suspension. Time feels different to them now, more finite, more precious, less like something that can be endlessly spent on avoidance. They are beginning to understand that staying frozen is also a decision, and usually the most quietly painful one of all. This clarity isn't just intellectual. It lives in the body, in the chest, in the quiet pressure that builds when they imagine reaching out, speaking honestly, doing something real. The unknown still frightens them, yes, but the emptiness of remaining disconnected is beginning to frighten them more. And that is why movement is getting closer. Words that have been held back are rising toward the surface. Actions that once felt impossible are becoming harder to keep postponing. Because once truth becomes this present, silence no longer feels like safety. It starts to feel unbearable. Remember this clearly. Whatever they do next will not come from a passing mood or an impulsive moment. It will come from the end of a long, painful, and deeply honest process of finally meeting themselves without the shelter of excuses. That is why this moment carries such weight. It is not just an emotional fluctuation. It is a reckoning, and reckoning changes people, quietly at first, slowly at first, and then completely and all at once. At the center of all of this is one truth that cannot be argued away. You changed something in them. You reflected a part of their own potential back to them in a way they couldn't unsee. You became a mirror, a catalyst, a fixed point during a season when they were adrift in their own confusion. Even in silence, that impact stayed. That's why they are arriving at a new level of self-awareness now. The noise is fading. The path is becoming visible. The question is no longer whether you affected them deeply. The question is simply when they will fully act on what they now know. And as this process continues, their true feelings are separating from all the layers of doubt and noise that were covering them. The confusion falls away piece by piece until what's left is just the core, the part they can no longer pretend not to see. They are realizing that trying to control these feelings only fed them, that ignoring the fire didn't put it out. It gave it more room to grow in the dark. Now the light is on. The truth is visible. And visible truth demands a response. Whether they move toward you or take a different path, it will no longer come from confusion. It will come from clarity. The inner noise is settling. In its place, a quieter and more grounded certainty is forming. They are standing in front of their own reflection, seeing what they feel, seeing what they walked away from, seeing that pretending not to know is no longer available to them as an option. So if you have felt the shift, trust that feeling. Something real is reaching its final stage. They are moving toward a decision that will reveal whether they are ready to live from truth instead of from fear. And your place in this moment is clear. Stay grounded in yourself. Stay centered. Resist the urge to chase what is already being brought into the light by its own gravity. Let them face their own heart fully. Let them feel the true meaning of your absence, the actual value of your presence, and the real cost of pretending to feel less than they do. Because this is what is genuinely happening right now. Their inner conflict is becoming inner clarity. Their silence is becoming understanding. Their confusion is becoming direction. The person who kept crossing back and forth over the same line is approaching a moment where that line finally holds still. One truth is rising above everything else. One choice is gathering more weight than every excuse that preceded it. And when that moment arrives, it won't just tell you how they feel. It will tell you who they are when life asks something real from them. If this reached something in you, something you've been quietly sitting with, hold on to it. The next chapter is closer than it appears. Sometimes the stillness just before a truth breaks open is the loudest and most significant part of the whole story.